Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing? Let me just see if that's okay. Just have a look to see who's in the chat. In the chat. The first live stream of the year. So I know it's the 28th of January, but Happy New Year, everyone. I've got a bit of a cough, sorry. Right, this live stream might get a little bit ranty because I'm fed up. I'm so fed up with things that are happening. Okay, I can see in the chat there's somebody called Impossible Agent who says hello from the Netherlands. Right, Impossible Agent. One of the things that I've been doing these last couple of weeks is looking into self-ID in the Netherlands. So the Dutch Parliament debated this for the first time September last year, and that's coming back to Parliament in February. So I'll be doing a video in Dutch about that and what I discovered about Dutch law and all this gender stuff. It was quite shocking to me, to be honest. And what they're trying to do in the Netherlands is even more bonkers than what Nicola Sturgeon tried to do in Scotland. But I'll focus a separate live stream on that because it's just, I could talk for hours otherwise. Right, so we've got people in the house from Prague, hello, from Israel, Switzerland, New Zealand, Finland, California. Jane Harris says, hi, we're all fed up. Oh, God. I've so had it that I'm going to have to really stop myself from screaming and shouting and cursing in this live stream as we go through stuff. Honestly. Okay, and East Sussex in the house. Hello. So, let's start, okay? I might ignore the chat a bit this evening, just so I get through stuff. So first of all, this whole trans rights or human rights stuff, I've had enough of that phrase, trans rights or human rights. What are you talking about? Trans is based on nothing but a pack of lies, and rights, they're not rights, they're demands, they're privileges. It's just the biggest lie we're being sold under that stupid, vapid slogan. And every time we have to keep asking the question, what is trans? What are you talking about? And we've seen that how important that is, especially with all this this double rapist shit hitting the fan. So just to summarize, because we're all from different places. Oh, Alice says, hi from Portland. Commiserations. Sorry, I hear that it's gone completely nuts over in Portland. Jeremy Fartner, thank you so much for your 20 American dollars. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. Right, okay, so let's get cracking. So, Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland tried to reform the Gender Recognition Act from 2004 that allows you to change your legal sex. The whole concept of changing your legal sex in itself is bonkers, but that's the way it is. You can change your legal sex. Nicola Sturgeon wanted to make that much, much easier. She wanted to reduce the age limit, the minimum age from 18 to 16, and this requirement she wanted to live in your acquired gender, whatever the hell that means. She wanted to change that from 2 years to 3 months. Now, as I said earlier, the Dutch government wants to go much further than that, but I'll deal with that in a separate live stream probably next week. Nicola Sturgeon pushed that through, and I say pushed that through because she ignored women's groups I mean, she consulted women's groups, but only the ones that are on board with all this bullshit, um, including that rape crisis center that's run by a man. But she ignored For Women Scotland. She, I think, also didn't really pay attention much to what detransitioners were saying. And it was very one-sided. And this is the thing that we constantly see when it comes to trans rights. It's always one-sided, and it's always about what I consider dirty tactics. So she also didn't want to wait for a certain court judgment. She just went ahead and did it. Why? Because she's been banging on about it for years. And she's obviously in a coalition with the Green Party, and the Green Party were like, when they formed the coalition, that was one of the conditions of the being in coalitions with them. So she pushed it through, and I'm so glad. I am so glad that the UK government said, hell no, here's Section 35, and vetoed it. That was such a relief. Now, obviously, Nicola isn't very happy about that. And so she is now planning to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxpayer money, obviously, on getting a judicial review to see if Section 35 had in fact been triggered properly. Catherine just said, "Hi, you've got turf mail." Indeed, Section 35. Also, there were polling showed that most people were opposed to it anyway, like the public. So in a way, I want to say thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola Sturgeon, for making this such a big thing, because now it's being exposed and people can see what it's really all about. And it's not going to go away. This is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. More gender shit's going to hit the fan, and more people are going to go, excuse me. And so I'm really hoping that what's happened here in the last couple of weeks will also have an effect on how parliamentarians in the Netherlands will deal with this issue, and that they'll take a step back and say, okay, whoa, what are we even talking about? What are we doing? Anyways, so let's have a look at Adam Graham, the double rapist. This is what I shall call him. I won't call him by the so-called woman's name he's adopted, and I won't call him she, her, and I won't refer to his penis as her penis, okay? No, just no. I don't want any part of these lives at all. So, bloke rapes 2 women, bloke gets arrested, bloke gets charged. When he's finally on trial, he decides, oh, I'm a lady. Starts putting really long nails on, using like a pink hooded jacket, walking around in tight leggings, showing his tackle, his actual weapon that he used on his victims. It's there, the bulge is there for all to see. And there's been so much talk of, oh, we need to normalize the bulge. No, we don't, actually. He's a bloke, he's got a dick. He used it to rape 2 women. We're not going to call him a she. No. The court, however, was instructed to not use his dead name and to use she, her, and that's why in court they did talk about her penis. I have no idea if the victims were present in court, but what must that have been like for them? Even reading it in the newspaper, her penis. Are they to believe now that they were raped by a woman? This is just ridiculous. Like, we shouldn't have to explain this. We shouldn't have to even, this is what I mean. I'm fed up. Now, I did say to myself, every time I want to scream or shout or curse, I'm going to use this phrase that I heard Sarah Fillmore use on GB News the other day when she was debating a bloated toad of a man with Magical Lady Fields. And I could see that she was holding back, but she kept very, very polite, very dignified. She never used she, her. She always used his name. But this is a phrase that she used. It is a matter of real bafflement to me. And I thought, okay, every time I want to scream and shout, I'm just going to think of Sarah. It is a real matter. It is a matter of real bafflement to me. It is a matter of real bafflement to me that we even have to explain this bullshit. Anyways, so the bloke is found guilty. The court says we recommend he goes to a male prison. Scottish Prison Service says no, he's going to go to that women's prison while he's on remand. She's on remand, sorry. And we're going to have a look at why the Scottish Prison Service decided to do that. Obviously, there was a public outcry, and then he was moved to a male wing of a male prison. He was moved on the 26th of January, so that was Wednesday, I think. Ellie Snyder, thank you so much for your $5 American. And you say, thank you for being my Sherpa from True Trans Base Camp up to the peak of Mount Trans. Good to finally see the endless panorama of gender rule clearly. You know what, Ellie, thank you so much once again. I think when we come into this and, we think we've peaked, it's just like a mountain climb, there's different camps along that mountain and you think you're at the top, but you're not. It's just there's lots of clouds that are shielding the rest of the mountain from view. And for a while you're like, hey, look at me. I peaked, I'm not fooled by all of this. Haha. Hey, I'm cool. Oh, look who's here as well. And then you see other people that you agree with and you're like, okay. And then suddenly you realize there's more of a mountain left to climb. And Ali, you talk about it's good to finally see the endless panorama of gender rule clearly. I mean, it's a frightening sight, but you have to get up to the top. And the only way you get to the top, on the way there's a dragon. You have to slay this dragon. It's the dragon of cognitive dissonance. Let's slay that beast, all of us. And I'm hoping that cases like this, Adam Graham, the double rapist, are going to help wake people up. So he was moved. Now, this presents an issue for Sturgeon. Is Adam a woman? If not, why not? Because surely then Nicola's being transphobic. And if he's not a woman, it shows that men can take advantage of claiming that they're a woman. If he is a woman, according to Nicola Sturgeon, then it shows that women need to be protected from women with a tackle like Adam. So it's a lose-lose situation for her and anyone who's ever said there's no conflict between trans rights and women's rights, because this is a crystal clear example that there is a conflict. And it's not the first, obviously, and it won't be the last. So who are some of these stupid organizations who've been saying that there are no conflicts and who've been, beating this woo drum about self-idea as well? Organizations like Engender, Women's Aid, and Rape Crisis Scotland. Well, they've been proven wrong. Self-ID itself is nothing but some stupid legal fiction driven by delusions, nothing else. Ugh. To can play, thank you so much for your $5 and a hippo on wheels. Okay, doke. The whole thing is just so bonkers. And when I look at the law as it is in the UK, where you have the Equality Act and single sex exemptions, and you have the Gender Recognition Act, I think everything has already gone way too far as it is. Because even the single sex exemptions in the Equality Act are exemptions. They're just like legal scraps you get given, like, yeah, you can have this, but organizations that use it really have to justify why they even put that in place. That just shows how far all of this stuff has gone. And in Holland, it's gone much further. But again, I'll save that for another live stream. So, Mr. Adam Double Rapist, obviously now in a male prison. But who else is there? There's somebody called Andrew Burns, although he now calls himself Tiffany Scott. Rebel, thank you so much for your 19 Danish krone. Thank you, thanks. And you too, Cat, £10. Self-serving super chat. Okay. You say you have so much to report, but in the meantime, Mr. Menno, love your work. Nice to see you. As always, have a beer or glass of wine on me. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stick with the rose tea, actually cinnamon tea. Okay, so who the hell is Andrew Burns? Andrew Burns is one of the most malicious, notorious prisoners in the Scottish prison system. He's been in it for years. First, he was in an all-male jail, and they put him in a segregation unit because he was so violent. Once he bit himself, and then he squirted the blood all around to people. Once he shat in his cell, and then he covered himself in his own shit and the walls. There were different prison officers that had to go in with full body protective gear and these plastic shields in order to be able to contain him, because he is so violent. Impossible Angel says Katie Dolotovsky is also there. Yes, I'll get to Katie in a bit, but I first want to talk about Andrew, because I only found out about Andrew today. So and that's another point. He tried to kill himself, and then he was wearing stuff that supposedly was was unable to be torn apart. Unterrible. But he found a way to do it, and then he tried to hang himself. But they caught him. Then he ended up in hospital. In hospital, he assaulted a nurse. He also once threw a chair at a female prison officer. He's attacked loads of people. He keeps getting. Basically, there's no release date for the man, because he's so aggressive and violent. So there's a word for that. What they put him on. It's an undetermined sentence. He is subject to an order for lifelong restriction, because they just can't. Because he's a risk. Wherever he goes, he's a risk. And there were some new charges after he'd assaulted somebody else in prison. Then he had to go to court for that, but they dropped it because it wasn't safe enough for anyone to be in court with him. That's how violent and crazy this guy is. What else did he do? As I said, he's one of the most dangerous inmates in the entire Scottish prison system. He also stalked a girl, a 13-year-old girl, from prison by sending her letters. I think he's been in prison since at least 2010. And yeah, for a while he called himself Mr. Mighty Almighty. Okay, so Mr. Mighty Almighty. Now, Tiffany Scott. Once it took 11 security and prison officers to overpower him. Flowers in her hair says, are they sending him to a women's prison? Well, yes, of course. Leslie Farrington asked, I don't think he has been moved yet, has he? No, he hasn't been moved yet, from what I know. but they've approved it. Okay, he's been asked for years to be transferred. It kept being rejected, but now senior management at the Scottish Prison Service have relented basically and said, all right then. So again, we need to bring this up with Nicola Sturgeon and this government and all these organizations championing girl dick. Right, so they're saying he's now likely to be moved to a women's prison, the new prison in Stirling. So he hasn't been moved yet, and that new prison, I think, opens up later in the year. So we're dealing with one of the most violent, aggressive characters in the Scottish prison system. But yes, of course, hey, let's transfer him because, man, I feel like a woman. Then there's Katie Dolotowski, who most of you will probably know, a pedophile who tried to rape a 10-year-old girl in a supermarket toilet in 2018 when he was only 18 himself. Also videoed a 12-year-old girl in a toilet in another supermarket. But hey, predatory men will never try and do anything like that, would they? He was spared jail at the time and then spent some time in a woman-only hostel for 71 days after duping stuff about his identity. Lovely characters, aren't they? Apparently, this woman-only hostel had a separate accommodation for trans women, which means it wasn't a woman-only hostel, but there was a shared garden. After they found out that basically he duped them, oh, but this never happens. He was then kicked out. And he's currently in Cornton Vale Prison, where they also put that Adam bloke for a while. So I'm sure most of you already know this. He's now, well, first actually they put him in a male prison called Polmont near Falkirk. There he served a sentence of assault. So again, this is a nice, lovely, ladylike person. While he was serving a sentence for assault, he assaulted an inmate while there, kicked him in the head or beat him in the head and beat his body. He pleaded guilty to that. Still in the male prison, but now he's moved to Cornton Vale, which is the women's prison. And of course, we all know the story about Karen White in the UK. Now, the Scottish Prison Service decides where prisoners go. And I want to highlight something about why the Scottish Prison Service puts males, aggressive, violent males who target women and girls in women's prisons. In other words, it is a matter of real bafflement to me how we got here. But the answer is the Scottish Trans Alliance. I'm not saying they're the only ones. There's also Stonewall Scotland, but the Scottish Trans Alliance has a huge influence on the Scottish Prison Service. So the Scottish Trans Alliance, I think, was set up in 2007 and managed until 2020 by someone called James Morton. So when you hear the word James Morton, you might think, oh, a bloke, but this is the Scottish Trans Alliance. So no, this is a woman. So for 13 years, she managed Scottish Trans Alliance, which last year, apparently, about £100,000 of taxpayer money was ring-fenced for Scottish Trans Alliance. So just imagine how much taxpayers' money they've received in previous years. In 2014, the Scottish Prison Service came up with new guidelines on how to deal with men with medical aid fields who want to be in a women's prison. And this was practically just as a document dictated by Scottish Trans Alliance. And there's an organization called Keep Prison Single Sex, and they've got a really good report on this. You can find that in the video description for this live stream. It's about 48, 49 pages. It's a PDF. I really urge you all to look at that document if you haven't already, because it shows how some, oh, I want to swear so much. It shows how an organization that is a matter of real bafflement to me managed to capture a public institution. So they basically put self-ID in place through policy in the Scottish prison system in 2014. This was no coincidence. It was no coincidence that they picked the prison service. This was a strategic decision. And when I first heard this from Kate, from Keep Prison Single Sex, when she talked about this, I was shocked by this. And even today, to read it, it just really brings it home how dodgy these organizations are, all of them. Menno, why am I saying my name? Because I'm reading the chat and somebody called my name, sorry. All of these organizations are dodgy and rotten to the core. I'm talking about Mermaids, I'm talking about Stonewall, since they started beating this woo drum. I'm talking about Scottish Trans Alliance, all of them rotten to the core. Why? Because the very principles and ideas that they're based on are nothing but lies. Lies, 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 and treachery. So what happened? Sorry, I'm just looking at my other computer. This is what the Scottish Trans Alliance did. I'm going to read out a quote from James. Darius Dillon, thank you so much for your $99 cents. Okay, so this is what James said about why they wanted to change the policies in the Scottish prison service. She said this, she wrote this in a bundle of essays, which was edited by Christine Burns, another person of real bafflement to me. Right, what did James say? We strategized that by working intensively with the Scottish prison service to support them to include trans women as women on a self-declaration basis, within very challenging circumstances, we would be able to ensure that all other public services should be able to do likewise. Okay? So, as Dennis Kavanagh says in the chat, they basically used female prisoners as lab rats for this self-ID bullshit. Because they thought, if we can target the most vulnerable women, one of the most vulnerable groups of women in society that nobody gives a shit about, and convince the authorities that men should be allowed in their spaces, then we can do it anywhere. Yeah? It's almost like that New York, New York song. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. Okay, I just think this is absolutely sickening. Somebody just said in England and Wales as well. Yes, I'm just focusing specifically now on the Scottish prison system, which is run separately. but I'll get back to England and Wales in a bit. So, what else did James say? The learning from our prison work has made it much easier to assist other Scottish public services, such as the NHS wards and schools, and to also respect trans people's gender identities. It was just a test bed. And that's why it's so important to recognize that James is a woman. This is a woman doing this to the most vulnerable women in our society. Can you believe it? It is a matter of real bafflement to me how a woman can do that to other women. Just as Nicola Sturgeon is selling women out. On the basis of what? Just a pack of lies. Apparently now the Scottish Prison Service is reviewing its policy with the Scottish Government, which of course is completely captured, so I wouldn't keep your hopes up for that. Apparently that's nearly coming to an end, so it's not like, you know, they would have considered what's just happened in the last couple of weeks. They've gone fully woo-woo, so I guess that any any recommendations they'll have is to make it even easier for the likes of Adam and what's that other idiot called? KT and Andrew and the likes. So England and Wales. England and Wales is run. Monique says, "Okay, that made me cry. What the fuck is going on?" Look, this is the reality of it. I'm sorry. We have to absolutely shine a light on it, a big fat bright light, and bring it out in the open, expose it. If you go to my the video description of this live stream, there's a link to the report by Keep Prison Single Sex, and you can read it all in there just to see the extent of how much the Scottish prison system has been captured, and how over the years the bond between the Scottish prison system and the Scottish Trans Alliance has only got stronger and stronger and stronger. So, in England and Wales, it's also been announced that they're going to be reviewing the policy that allow men to go into women's prisons. And basically, Dominic Raab made a statement on the 25th of January, and he basically said, if you have a dick, yeah, you're not going to go into the women's prison. Also, if you have a conviction of a sex offense, then again, you won't go into the women's prison. Yeah, that's not good enough, though, is it? Like, no men in women's prisons, no matter how they identify. Just no, absolutely not. It is perfectly lawful to say that and to do that and to keep men with medical aid fields, even if they have a GRC, to keep them out. Okay, that's what the single-sex exemptions are for. Let's reinforce them. There is nothing that says, oh, you must transfer them just because they say so. As much as they try to do that, no, just no. Sharon Gibson, thank you so much for your £10, and you're saying, see you in Glasgow. If you're there, I will be there. I'll be there. That's the 5th of February, is it? The Sunday? I think so. So I'll see you there, Sharon. Make sure you say hi, and then I can thank you in person for your £10. Thank you so much. Okay, so no males in female jails. Simple. No exemptions. Because even Dominic Raab is saying, oh, there may be some exemptions, you know, in exceptional cases. What exceptional case? Males and females are not the same. That's it. Done. In male prisons, you already have separate units for vulnerable prisoners. If I was to end up in a prison, obviously in the male prison, look at me. I'm a skinny little guy. I'm not particularly strong. I'm not particularly blokey. I'd be the first one they'd come for. Come on. Does that give me the right to say I want to be in the ladies' prison? No. They could put me in the vulnerable unit, in the men's wing. And there was a story that I read online about some guy who ended up in prison for stealing a car or something for 4 years in Australia, and then claimed to have been raped 2,000 times by the men. And he was claiming, I should have been put in the women's prison because I look like a woman. And no, you're a bloke. And he still had his, plumbing, even if he didn't have that, even if he got rid of that, doesn't change anything. You're a bloke. Terrible to hear what he went through. That doesn't mean you can go into a women's prison and they have to somehow solve that situation for you. No, that's something that the male estate has to sort out, and they could have put him in a vulnerable unit or kept him safe or done something to stop those rapes. It's got nothing to do with women. Women don't have to sort that out. Okay, so I know in Surrey apparently there's a trans wing at a prison in Surrey, but again, it's a trans wing as part of a women's prison. Why don't they just put that in a male prison? No males in female jails, and yeah, just say men. Just say men when we're talking about these people because they're men. And there is one saying, when you read that document from Keep Prison Single Sex that I've linked in the video description, you'll also see that when they consulted on reforming policies that they implemented in 2014, that's 9 years ago. This stuff has been happening for at least 9 years. All this stuff that's been happening sort of behind the scenes. And while most people have no idea about it, it's like Kate Harris from LGBT Alliance, she describes it as Japanese knotweed. It's been working its way through institutions and getting a grip on stuff for at least 9 years in this Scottish prison system. And after, Scottish Trans Alliance then gave this guidance to schools that schools should transition children without the parents knowing. This is why I say these organizations are rotten to the core. Every last single one of them. Right, so in that report from Keep Prison Single Sex, you can also see that women's organizations weren't consulted. It was very one-sided, which again is part of the dirty tactics. And there's a saying that I've used before in other live streams or videos: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So at least here in the UK now, the tables are turning, and this is all becoming much clearer. We can all see what this is really all about. And I can't wait for this whole house of cards to come tumbling down. And I really hope that this particular case with Adam Double Rapist Graham and Katie Dolotovsky and this Andrew Burns bloke who wants to be transferred and is being given the green light, that these cases will just sort of lead to much more light being shone onto this, and that it won't go away, and that it will help to completely debunk the bonkerness, the absolute idiocy, expose rather, of self-ID, and that we're not just going to have have it taken out of the Scottish prison system, which I guess is not going to happen overnight, obviously, but also education, also healthcare, everywhere. We need to get rid of it. I guess that sort of concludes whatever I wanted to say this evening. So, and I've been talking how long? 40 minutes. I want to give a shout out to Keep Prison Single Sex for all the hard work that they've done. Chris says this is a scam. Well, that's how I see it. That's why, when they say that trans rights are human rights, no, it's absurd. And this movement is not a human rights movement. It's not about rights. It's about demands. It's about privileges. And the only way they can get those is by taking away the rights of others. That is not a human rights movement. That's a parasite movement. So shout out to Keep Prison Single Sex, and especially Kate, who runs it. I want to give a shout out to all the women who have protested outside prisons last year and also in the past, because they're helping to give all this visibility to this. Even if it's just a small group of women, they go out there. They're the ones making the signs, making the effort, and doing it and being the boots on the ground. So thank you very much to all those women. I went to 2 protests last year outside the Ministry of Justice in the UK, but there are women and they go to different prisons all around the country. I want to also say a thank you particularly to Lily Maynard, who's been reporting on this and going to those protests for years, to Julia Long, and to Belle Staffy. I know there's a lot more women involved in all of this, but these are just the ones that I absolutely wanted to thank. So, what is next? I'm going to work on this Dutch video about self-ID in the Netherlands. I'll probably do a live stream about that next week. And there was a song I was hoping to get out before the end of the year last year, but that'll probably be January or March. And tomorrow I hope to see some of you in London at Speaker's Corner. And I'll see some of you in Glasgow on the 5th. Jane Harris asks, how do we donate? Who do you want to donate to Keep Prison Single Sex? Let me know, Jane, and I'll just keep an eye on the chat for a bit. Dennis says, see you there, mate. Dennis, are you coming to Glasgow? Or are you talking about tomorrow in London? Luke says, I've lost friends over this parasitic movement, and to be honest, I'm glad their narcissistic delusion has been exposed. I don't miss them. Dennis, okay, see you tomorrow. Cool. Okay. So tomorrow sounds like it's going to be good. Okay, anyone who can make it to Hyde Park tomorrow, 12 o'clock, I believe it starts. Normally at 1, but I think tomorrow it's at 12. And somebody says, did you see that Dylan Mulvaney did his facial feminization surgery and made a video about it? Yeah, well, Jane Harris says, donate to you. You know what, Jane? In the video description for this live stream, there is a link to my PayPal. So that's for one-offs. And there's also a link to my Patreon, which is for if you want it to be a monthly thing. So thank you all so very much for joining me on this Saturday evening and listening to me having a bit of a rant. If you have any other information yourself that you think is important, leave it in the comments, okay? Because the more information we all have, the better. So thank you all. Have a lovely weekend and see you soon. And the stream. Oh, I was going to finish with a little song. Okay, the song I thought it was a positive one, right? About shining a light on things. So what's from the musical Hair? Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine in. The sun shine in. The sun shine in. Ha! Okay. All right. See ya.